are going to see the next verse, that is verse 28 from chapter 8, that is attaining supreme. All right, so before we start the verse, I would do Jai Radha Madhav and then we'll get started. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Jai Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Srila Prabhupada. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. So
Hare Krishna.
Share the next today's verse, that is verse number 28 from chapter 8. Okay. Let me make a little bigger so we can see nicely. Okay. So I'll recite one line and then you all can repeat if you desire. Vedeshu yagyeshu tapashu chaiva
Vedeshu yajneshu tapassu chaiva
daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam
daneshu yat punya phalam pratishtam
atyeti tat sarvam idam viditva
atyeti tat sarvam idam viditva
yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam
yogi param sthana upaiti chadyam
Vedeshu yagyeshu tapasu chaiva
Vedeshu yajneshu tapassu chaiva
daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam
daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam
atyeti tat sarvam idam viditva
atyeti tat sarvam idam viditva
yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam
yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam
Vedeshu yagyeshu tapasu chaiva
Vedeshu yajneshu tapassu chaiva
daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam
daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam
atyeti sat sarvam idam viditva
atyeti tat sarvam idam viditva
yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam
yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam
Anyone would like to recite? Please proceed.
Vedeshu yajneshu tapassu chaiva
Vedeshu yaggeshu tapasu chaiva
daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam
daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam
atyeti tat sarvamidam viditva
atteti tat sarvam idam viditva
yogi param sthanamapaiti chadyam.
yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam. Okay, anyone else? If not, we can start with synonyms. Okay. Vedeshu,
Vedeshu,
in the study of the Vedas.
in the study of the Vedas.
Yaggeshu,
Yajneshu,
in the performances of yajna, sacrifice.
in the performances of yajna, sacrifice.
Tapasu,
Tapasu,
in undergoing different types of austerities.
in undergoing different types of austerities.
Cha, also.
Cha, also.
Eva, certainly.
Eva, certainly.
Daneshu, in giving charities.
Daneshu, in giving charities.
Yat, that which.
Yat, that which.
Punya phalam, result of pious work.
Punya phalam, result of pious work.
Pradishtam, indicated.
Pradishtam, indicated.
Atyeti, surpasses.
Atyeti, surpasses.
Tat sarvam, all those.
Tat sarvam, all those.
Idam, this.
Idam, this.
Viditva, knowing.
Viditva, knowing.
Yogi, the devotee.
Yogi, the devotee.
Param, supreme.
Param, supreme.
Thanam, abode.
Thanam, abode.
Upaiti, achieves.
Upaiti, achieves.
Cha, also.
Cha, also.
Adyam, original.
Adyam, original.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service, he attains all these, and at the end, he reaches the supreme eternal abode. Okay, I think I have some internet issue at my end. Okay, let me start again. Sorry for that. Okay, let's see if that helps. All right. Purport. This verse is the summation of the 7th and 8th chapters, which particularly deal with the Krishna consciousness and devotional service. One has to study the Vedas under the guidance of the spiritual master and undergo many austerities and penances while living under his care. A brahmachari has to live in the home of the spiritual master just like a servant, and he must beg alms from door to door and bring them to the spiritual master. He takes food only under the master's order, and if the master neglects to call the student for food that day, the student fast. These are some of the Vedic principles for observing Brahmacharya. After the student studies the Vedas under the master for some time, at least from age 5 to 20, he becomes a man of perfect character. Study of the Vedas is not meant for the recreation of armchair speculators, but for the formation of character. After this training, the brahmachari is allowed to enter into household life and marry. When he is a householder, he has to perform many sacrifices so that he may achieve further enlightenment. He must also give charity according to the country, time, and candidate, discriminating among charity in goodness, in passion, and in ignorance, as described in Bhagavad Gita. Then, after retiring from household life, upon accepting the order of Vanaprastha, he undergoes severe penances, living in forest, dressing with tree bark, not shaving, etc. By carrying out the orders of Brahmacharya, householder life, Vanaprastha, and finally sannyas, one becomes elevated to the perfectional stage of life. Some are then elevated to the heavenly kingdoms. And when they become even more advanced, they are liberated in the spiritual sky, either in the impersonal Brahma Jyotir or in the Vaikuntha planets or Krishna Loka. This is the path outlined by Vedic literatures. The beauty of Krishna consciousness, however, is that by one stroke, by engaging in devotional service, one can surpass all the rituals of the different orders of life. The words idam viditva indicate that one should understand the instructions given by Sri Krishna in this chapter and the seventh chapter of Bhagavad Gita. One should try to understand these chapters not by scholarship or mental speculation, but by hearing them in association with devotees. Chapters 7 through 12 are the essence of Bhagavad Gita. The first 6 and the last 6 chapters are like coverings for the middle 6 chapters, which are especially protected by the Lord. If one is fortunate enough to understand Bhagavad Gita, especially these middle 6 chapters, in association of devotees, then his life at once becomes glorified beyond all penances, sacrifices, charities, speculations, etc. For one can achieve all the results of these activities simply by Krishna consciousness. One who has a little faith in Bhagavad Gita should learn Bhagavad Gita from a devotee, because in the beginning of the 4th chapter, it is stated clearly that Bhagavad Gita can be understood only by devotees. No one else can perfectly understand the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. One should therefore learn Bhagavad Gita from a devotee of Krishna, not from mental speculators. This is a sign of faith. When one searches for a devotee and fortunately gets a devotee's association, one actually begins to study and understand Bhagavad Gita. By advancement in the association of the devotee, one is placed in devotional service, and this service dispels all one's misgivings about Krishna or God and Krishna's activities, form, pastimes, name, and other features. After these misgivings have been perfectly cleared away, one becomes fixed in one's study. Then one relishes the study of Bhagavad Gita and attains the state of feeling always Krishna conscious. In the advanced stage, one falls completely in love with Krishna. This highest perfectional stage of life enables the devotee to be transferred to Krishna's abode in the spiritual sky, Golok Vrindavan, where the devotee becomes eternally happy. Thus, end the Bhakti Vedanta purports to the 8th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of attaining the Supreme. Very beautiful verse. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivas Adi Gaur Bhaktarunda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining. I sincerely take blessings from all assembled Vaishnavas and devotees. And today we are going to see this verse, that is 28th verse, where Bhagavan Krishna is talking about different types or different paths and how devotional service is a simple path and it attains the end goal faster than the other path. So in this particular verse, as we see in the translation, Bhagavan Krishna is referring to paths such as studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. And Srila Prabhupada in his purport has in detail, Srila Prabhupada has explained by giving example of the 4 orders in our life. That is Brahmacharya, then Grihasthashram, that is householder, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas ashram. So Srila Prabhupada gives this very beautiful example where we can clearly see how it would be so difficult with our conditioned life, where Srila Prabhupada says Brahmachari has to live in the home of spiritual master, just like a servant. So in actual setting, Brahmachari is actually leave his home and he takes shelter of spiritual master. So his whole and soul aim is to serve spiritual master. For doing that, he lives in the home of spiritual master. In addition, like there are many services this a brahmachari needs to perform. And one of the service where Srila Prabhupada has mentioned that every day, not every day, he must beg for the food from door to door and bring it to spiritual master. Okay, and it's not just done that the brahmachari bring the food and give it to spiritual. It's not over. After that, spiritual master needs to call and invite or tell that brahmachari, okay, you can take a food, because that's what Srila Prabhupada says. Bringing the food is step one, but spiritual master needs should ask him that you should take food, right? So that's how the relationship is between spiritual master and the disciple. So in the brahmachari ashram, what Srila Prabhupada, when he give example of when spiritual master neglects to call a student for food that day, the student fast for the whole day. Now what Srila Prabhupada, this is one example, and what it actually reflects how hard it would be. At least what I can say for myself, 24 Ekadashis in a year, and one Ekadashi is a Nirjala Ekadashi. So every Ekadashi, like I know how at heart, like it struggles. That is struggling, meaning we all know that Ekadashi is performing more and more sadhana. However, at other end, mind is hankering because of the food, the hunger, right? And that's why it's very hard sometimes just to even do even regular sadhana. What to speak of doing more sadhana with focused attention with that desire. So here in the brahmachari ashram, it is completely at the mercy of spiritual master. If he calls or if he neglect to call, based on that, brahmachari will get food for that day. So even though we are looking at this example from purely from the materials perspective, it definitely helps to build a this is basically austerity and kind of build a detachment, right, for the brahmachari. Now Srila Prabhupada has given this example because these are some of the Vedic principles. Now Srila Prabhupada is helping us understand that studying the Vedas, what else and how hard it would be. So there are 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda, and these Vedas give knowledge about what to do, what not to do, right? Those are authority. And how that education looks like. If in case of brahmachari ashram that we just looked at. The second one is Srila Prabhupada mentioned so what is the outcome when a student in the brahmachari, when he undergo this education or studying the Vedas from age 5 to 20. Srila Prabhupada says at least 5 to 20. Then he become a man of perfect character. So that is the outcome. It is a good outcome. That is, it builds a perfect character. Meaning that person now has a knowledge of what is right, what is not right. Okay. And then Srila Prabhupada says study of the Vedas is not meant for the recreation of armchair speculators. So what is armchair speculator mean? Who just speak without even knowing about it. or without even practicing. So those are like the armchair, they just speak. But Vedas and study of the Vedas is not meant for that. It really build your character from inside, within. It's not just external, not just build a just a scholarly person. And then Srila Prabhupada continued that after this training, brahmachari is allowed to enter into household life and marry. Again, it need not that every brahmachari should marry, but he is allowed, if he desires, to enter into household life and marry. And when he's householder, he has to perform many sacrifices. Now here Srila Prabhupada clarify that when one give a charity, he needs to discriminate among the charity in goodness, in passion, and in ignorance. I think this is very in detail explained, I think, in the chapter 14 or 15. Different types of food, I mean food in different modes of nature. Similarly, charity in different modes of nature. So now as the brahmachari become householder, then he has to perform sacrifices, again for what? To achieve further enlightenment. Having the knowledge of Vedas, now he is now progressing towards the final goal. So now these are all I would say intermediate steps, that is performing sacrifices, for giving charity. As the journey continues, and of course this is all applicable when we are talking about a life of 100 years. So Srila Prabhupada has mentioned, I think around at the age of 50, one should accept Vanaprastha ashram. Right? So Vanaprastha is the next. So after Grihastha ashram, next is Vanaprastha ashram. So idea is to detach from those household activity and then start getting for more prep, more and more towards, so that focus more on Krishna or the ultimate destination. And that's why Srila Prabhupada says, upon accepting the order of Vanaprastha, he undergoes severe penances, meaning living in the forest, meaning he leave even the house, go to forest, he change the dress, say dressing with the tree bark. So that's a complete detachment and not shaving, etc. And then by carrying out these orders of these different varna ashram, right? Brahmacharya, householder life, Vanaprastha, finally sannyas. And one become elevated to perfectional stage of life. So Srila Prabhupada is giving this beautiful example. One is very clear that we have to perform so many austerities, penances, so many steps, right? And then once, so finally sannyasa, and one become elevated to perfectional stage of life. And that what is the outcome? Some get elevated to heavenly. So it's basically you pass the exam, and what next? Some get elevated to heavenly kingdom. Some are more elevated, get more advanced. Then some may go to Brahma Jyoti. Some may go to Vaikuntha planet, Krishna Loka. So I believe Brahma Jyoti, as we know, it is the effulgence of the coming out from the body of Krishna, where there are some yogis who really aspire for that, getting merged into, say, Brahma Jyoti, impersonal Brahma Jyoti. But devotee doesn't desire for that, because the devotee is looking for a loving relationship with the personal form, that is Supreme Personality of the Godhead. Now, having this explanation of brahmachari ashram, then householder ashram, what the message coming out is how the austerity and how the penance is, and it is possible that it's basically we are trying to walk up a say um, a tall building, a tall apartment building with say 25 story or 20 story. If we keep walking through the stairs, it will, of course, you will reach the top 25th floor, but it will take lots and lots of time. I just take 25th floor as the example. Of course, some may walk, but if the same apartment building has a elevator, then that elevator definitely take you to your destination much quicker. And what is that elevator? Is that's what Srila Bhagwan Krishna is referring in the translation, that is devotional service. And even in the purport below, this is one paragraph Srila Prabhupada mentioned using words like one stroke. The beauty of Krishna consciousness is by one stroke, by engaging in devotional service, one can surpass all the rituals of the different orders of life. What that means is one doesn't need to perform those, or it doesn't mean in Krishna consciousness there are no austerities. I mean, definitely whatever four regulatory principles Srila Prabhupada mentioned to us to keep our sadhana strong, of course those need to be followed. But what we are talking about here is the other austerities that we just saw, what Srila Prabhupada explained. Brahmachari ashram, householder ashram, vanaprastha. One doesn't need to perform all those things. If one engaged directly into the devotional service, number one doesn't need to perform all those, and number two, even the benefit that one gets, that surpass the outcome or the benefit from the other path. For example, some, as I said, some only desire for impersonal Brahma Jyotir. So I think Srila Prabhupada is so clear in saying this is just by one stroke. Don't worry about so many different paths. This is one path. Just directly engage in devotional service and you reach to your destination. Now, to reach to your destination, when you engage, you don't need to be a scholar. You don't need to have material qualifications. That's the beauty. You just need that desire to serve Krishna. So here I would like to share a story from Bhagavatam. This is a story about Brahmana's wives. So on one day, Krishna, I mean, every day Krishna used Krishna, Balaram, and his Gopa friends. They used to take cows, calves every day, right? In the mountain, and then cows can eat to feed them. Now, on one day, Krishna wake up little early in the morning, and he started, and of course he, Balaram, all those Gopa friends, they began early. They took all the cows, and what that early means, the mothers of the Gopa friend and Krishna, they didn't get enough time to prepare lunch and give it to Krishna and all other Gopa friends, right? And one other thing that I learned when I was here listening this story, mothers of Gopa friends, they were looking for preparing this lunch because they knew that when all Gopa take lunch together, they share. And that's why then mothers of Gopa friend feel, oh, what I'm gonna make, Krishna is gonna eat also. So they were very, very looking for it. So on that morning, Krishna, Gopa, Balaram left early. And as during noon time, uh, Gopas are talking to Krishna. Krishna, we know you can beat so many demons, but how would you now beat our hunger? Because no one has a lunch with them because they started early. So what Krishna says, um, at little bit at some distance, there are some Brahmins. They are performing some sacrifices. Why don't you go and you can say, hey, we are hungry, and maybe you can mention Balaram's name and please give us some food based. And then as per Krishna's guidance, all devotees, no, not devotees, the Gopa friends, they walked and they saw the Brahmanas are performing sacrifices, and they, so if here the Gopa friends, they are not scholarly, or they are not PhDs, or they are not like highly qualified, know all Sanskrit shlokas. No, they just know they want to get food for Krishna, Balaram, and all of them. So they just, with that simple I would say simple attitude, they just request those Brahmanas, this is so and so, so please give us a remnants. But interestingly, those Brahmanas, they were so busy, they even neglected. They didn't even speak even a word with those Gopas. So now those Gopas didn't understand now what to do. So they came back to Krishna. They narrated the whole situation. And they say, I don't know why they even talk to us. Now those Brahmanas are very educated, highly qualified, because they know how to perform those sacrifices as per Vedas, all that thing. Now what Krishna says, okay, then Krishna gave advice, okay, you go to those Brahmanas' wives and you ask that Krishna, for me, that we need some food, we are all hungry. And they followed their advice of Krishna and they went to Brahmanas' wives. And now Brahmanas' wives, they are not highly qualified like Brahmanas, but they are the devotees of Krishna. Now, how those wives become devotees of Krishna? That's also very interesting, because those wives, when every day they go to the marketplace in Vraja, they used to interact with the residents of the Vraja, and Vraja residents every time only speak about Krishna Katha. Now, just by hearing that conversation, these wives become so much into Krishna. They become devotee just by hearing. And when now these Gopas now come to this Brahmana's wives and they say, okay, we need some food. We are hungry. Krishna, Balaram, they need food. Just by hearing Krishna, Balaram, they went into ecstasy. They like kind of speechless. And now this Gopa friend doesn't know what's going on. They said maybe like Brahmanas, they are also now behaving with us. But then they immediately came out of ecstasy and they said, okay, we'll prepare. So I think they prepare, they give a lot of food, and they even came with Gopa friends. Now they get, because in those time, women couldn't go out of the house without permission of either husband, brother, right? But they didn't entertain. They because they were so much into Krishna, So they just went with Gopas and they give food to Krishna. And after that, Krishna all had food, and then they don't want to go back. But Krishna said, "You have to go back." But they said, "We are now. We are little." They were scared in their heart because without taking permission, they all the way came here. So there was a fear. But Krishna said, "Don't worry, it will be all fine." And then they went back. And what Krishna did through Paramatma, through Super Soul, in each Brahmana's heart, he speak with Brahmana. And then those Brahmana realize, what are we doing? Even though we are highly qualified, we couldn't serve. But our wives, they could serve Krishna. Right? So this story, I found it so much connected because we don't need to be qualified. We don't need to perform lots of sacrifices as per Vedas. We don't need to really learn Vedas. So many verses. We just need to have that just sincere love for Krishna. And of course, we may not have it today. That's why Srila Prabhupada has given us, at least start with a regulated life first. Start with regulated life. And that regulated life eventually will build a surrender. So regulated life means 4 regulative principle. At least we should try. I think once, of course, who are initiated, they definitely took a vow, right? So follow all those principles every day, because that will eventually bring the surrender, complete surrender, and eventually only by Krishna's mercy, Krishna will give love, the prema, Krishna prema. So that's the gist of this of this particular verse. As I'm scrolling down, yeah. So here is Srila Prabhupada. Now in this particular paragraph, mention about the importance of reading Bhagavad Gita. And Srila, the key point is, Srila Prabhupada, I think he mentioned at many places, when we are learning or understanding, trying to understand Bhagavad Gita, it's not by scholarship. One should learn from devotee of Krishna only. The reason is, if one is read, for example, there are many scholars of Bhagavad Gita who do not accept Krishna as a god. They consider Krishna as a magical or a historian. So that is why Srila Prabhupada said, one should not go to those people who doesn't understand. So one should only go to devotee of Krishna to learn and understand Bhagavad Gita. And then Srila Prabhupada giving this line, he talks about how the middle 6 chapters. Now we are reading on this 8th chapter, right? How middle 6 chapters are more towards the that's the crux, bhakti yoga. What is bhakti? Is a love for Krishna. So first 6 and last 6 are basically covering. So what is first 6 chapters? It actually introduced a concept, critical concepts. We are not a body, we are a soul, right? If for a conditioned soul, we don't even have that knowledge, I mean, to start with, we need to have that background, right? Then it would be even easier to appreciate the middle 6 chapters. Yeah. So here, as we discussed just now, that one who has a little faith in Bhagavad Gita should learn from a devotee and not from the mental speculators. Yeah. And then Srila Prabhupada here then is kind of telling us like how the advancements, one who is a devotee. So here as one learn this or try to understand Bhagavad Gita from another devotee, what is the outcome? All his misgivings are cleared. That's what Srila Prabhupada mentioned. So in other words, there is term called anartha. Anarthas means which are something that our heart is full of all those unwanted desires. So that anartha cleanup that occurs. And one becomes fixed in one study. Then the determination, one build the determination, and then one relish the study of Bhagavad Gita. So that's why Srila Prabhupada is explaining how significant it is to learn it from the devotee on a regular basis and ask or inquire submissively. And in the advanced stage, one falls completely in love with Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada is explaining, even by reading this Bhagavad Gita properly in the disciplic succession from a devotee of Krishna, how eventually it even helps to even get that final destiny, that is the love of Krishna. Very beautiful. So I think what I would end here, but I would like to summarize quickly this particular verse. And Srila Prabhupada has explained us with lots of examples, right? So first one is Vedeshu, as if I scroll up a little bit. So studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerity, giving charity, these all different paths Srila Prabhupada explained us, taking a very simple example of Brahmacharya ashram, Gruhastha ashram, Vanapastha ashram, and Sannyasi. Very easy to understand, like how hard it would be, how austerities are, how penances are. However, the devotional service is one stroke. One stroke means rather than going to the top by climbing up through stairs, you take elevator, is one stroke. This is the analogy, but it really works. And that's why instead of spending time in learning Vedas, lots of, and it would be, I think the recommended path is perform the devotional service. And for us, we should start with first regulated life, because love is not something manifest automatically. We need to first know whom we are loving. So first is regulated life. That's where the 4 regulative principles come into picture. And that's why in the Krishna says, by performing devotional service, he attained all this, and eventually he attained the supreme abode. Okay, so then we looked at the example from Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a story of Bhagavan Krishna and the wives of Brahmana. What is the message from that story? Even though Brahmanas were highly qualified, they couldn't serve Krishna. They were not accepting Krishna as a supreme. However, on the other side, Gopa, Brahmanas' wives, they may not be told that highly qualified or learned, but they have one, that is love for Krishna. And Krishna only look for love. He doesn't look for if I have all 700 verses of Bhagavad Gita by heart. No. I know all verses in say Bhagavatam. No. Yeah, of course, I'm not saying we should not memorize it. If you can, definitely. But the goal is performing ahetuki seva. Okay, so that we looked at. And third is the Bhagavad Gita reading. That's what Srila Prabhupada explained. That is, even the reading of the Bhagavad Gita, one should read it from or understand from the devotee of Krishna, not from any just a scholarly person who is not a devotee. That's a very clear message. And how eventually we read that Bhagavad Gita sincerely, eventually it remove the anarthas. Number two, determination, and finally we get the love, Krishna Prema. With that said, I'll stop here. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. And please share your comments, questions, or any correction if I have done any mistakes. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. Prabhu, during the class you said that Krishna Prema can be achieved by mercy of Krishna. So how to get that mercy? No, just keeping that desire and just praying that yeah, give me Krishna Prema. And if I pray, then why Krishna is not giving me Krishna Prema? Can you enlighten me on that?
Okay. I'll share, Prabhuji, what I have learned. And I am very much far away from even Bhava, Prema. So it would be more theoretical answer, not definitely a realization. So Krishna's mercy, basically it manifests through our Acharya and Srila Prabhupada. And from Srila Prabhupada, now we have our spiritual master, devotees, right? Vaishnavas. So mercy is essentially, as I said, Krishna Prema is not something one can acquire. It's not about that. It has to be given by Krishna. There is no formula. There is nothing else that conditioned soul can even try to acquire something. No, it's all about love. So love is reciprocation. Krishna has to give, and Krishna reciprocates based on the extent of our reciprocation towards him. And now we would say, where is Krishna here? We don't see Krishna around us. Oh yeah, there is a deity in the temple, but where is other Krishna? There is no Krishna. So now Krishna manifests. So Krishna is devoted. Krishna loves his devotee. So serving devotees, of course, then serving devotees ahetuki, unconditionally, and serving devotees, and there are lots of other services, right? Book distribution, serving temple, serving Shiksha Guru. So this essentially it's a service. So that service, slowly and slowly, it will first remove the anartha. Anartha about I am the doer. I am the doer. I can do everything, and then I'm planning this. Whatever those anartha, it's all centered around I. So basically the mercy is like slowly that service manifests as we do service with that whole mood. Even initially, I take my example. I do service just for the sake of doing service, for example. But how do I do the service really with that real meaning, that is ahaituki, and serving for a devotee of Krishna? So that once one get into that service, then anarthas, and then our sadhana, then Krishna will reciprocate through devotees, or maybe any his arrangement, because we have heard many stories, right? Examples such as even some devotees who are at the last stage, some devotees has even seen sometime Jagannath ji, sometime Narsimha Bhagwan. So we don't know how Krishna will reciprocate, either direct reciprocation or through devotees. Now your question is, how do we get that? I think the only thing is just continue serving devotees and perform 4 regulative principle and the chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, as much as we can. That's the answer to the how part that Srila Prabhupada has given to all of us. Because we probably are not at the stage of, let me take my example. I am not at the stage of spontaneous love. But at least for me, like conditioned soul, we need to go with a regulated life first. So that's my understanding, Prabhuji. You
Thank
add,
you, Prabhu.
yeah, you can add.
Very
Prabhu.
nice answer, Madhavkanta Prabhu. And I was thinking also association, right? Like even in the material world, when a girl and a boy meet, they're not going to immediately sometimes be attracted to each other, but more they hang out with each other, more they associate with each other, more they get to know about each other, more they get to know their qualities, and their different activities, and you feel the reciprocation. That's when the love develops, right?
Yes, Mataji, no doubt.
Yeah. So, but very nice class also. I'm going to miss these Bhagavad Gita classes for a while. So if you don't see me for a couple of weeks, I'm in California.
Oh, okay, no problem.
I'm going to miss these classes.
Yeah. While preparing this for this lecture, I personally really like that story from Bhagavatam.
Yes, I'm so glad you narrated that, and you narrated it so nicely also. I didn't quite realize how the Brahmana wives fell in love with Krishna. I didn't realize they heard from the Vrajabasis, stories about Krishna, and that's how they fell in love with Krishna.
Yeah. Same here, Mataji. When I was hearing, I was like, oh, it's again Krishna's mercy, whatever.
I know, and I mean, I don't know. We have got a little flavor of that when we were reading Damodar Janani in the morning. Were you there when we were reading Damodar Janani in the morning?
Yes,
During the Damodar month. I mean, when we were reading it, we were like waiting for the story the next day, and we even began to understand what Damodar Ashtakam says when it says it puts the Vrajavasis into pools of ecstasy. Because like that story was like so beautiful, every word, every activity of Krishna. Next day everyone was waiting for the narration, and the narration of course was done so nicely by Shivram Swami,
Yes,
in
Mataji.
such a poetic manner. But we were like waiting to hear every single day, and we could feel that nectar.
Yes.
So
That
hearing Katha, hearing those narrations, I can see how the Brahmanas' wives, if they were hearing about Krishna, would fall in love with him.
Yeah.
Very nice example. Thank you. And you don't, like you said, you don't have to be scholarly.
Yeah, Mataji.
which the Brahmanas were, and they still did not understand the goal, ultimate goal of who they were worshipping.
Even Mataji, my experience is, I'm taking example of our material life. Even in the corporate world, even sometimes you are not scholar, but I don't know what works. Sometimes people go to higher levels even without having that completely scholar. They have maybe different skills, but that's a different. But I thought like scholar is not always. But
Yeah,
I think
someone who sometimes someone might be technically and very practically able to do the job, but they are not necessarily scholarly, right?
yeah. Okay, so I think it's 8 o'clock now. We'll stop here. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha
Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Anantapati Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Madhavkanta Prabhu Ki Jai. Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Hari Bol.
See you in a couple of